Hello, hello, and welcome to Apple Jams, your Beatles and solo Beatles hangout. I'm so glad to see you here, so glad you could come. I have one little baby request, and that is if you would please me by smashing a like on this video and subscribing if you haven't already. That would really help me if you can. And remember, if you're thinking, then please do feel free to use the chapterization to skip ahead to the actual list. Right, thanks for clicking on this video. I'm really excited about this because this is the first of a brand new series for Apple Jams that I'm calling Ranking the Beatles. I just love ranking things, whether it's songs, whether it's albums, whether it's cover art, and I love hearing other people's views as well. Sometimes I'll agree, often I don't, and sometimes somebody might just change my mind. So we're kicking things off with a track-by-track ranking of the Beatles' first studio album, Please Please Me. We're going to go through the tracks in album order. I'll give you my take and opinions on the songs, and then we're going to place them in the ranking based relatively on the other songs that we've done so far in the list. This is a very similar format to the one used by Andrew Dixon. In fact, I've pretty much stolen it from him, so I'm sure you're well aware of who Andrew Dixon is, but if you're not, go and check out his channel. He's got hours and hours of great content. I'm also going to tell you which version of each song I prefer based on the albums that I own. So for Please Please Me, that means that we're doing a three-way comparison. We'll be looking at the 2009 stereo, the 2009 mono, and for certain tracks, we'll be looking at the stereo remixes on the 2023 Red Album reissue. I don't have the 1980s CDs, I'm afraid, and I don't have any of the American albums, so this is going to be very much from my point of view as a millennial collector focused on the UK discography. Hopefully you find that interesting, whether you're similar in life stage as me, or whether you're coming at this from a completely different one. The usual disclaimer applies. I'm sure I don't need to say it, but this is just my opinion. I'm just talking about my thoughts on the tracks. And when I say worst, this is the Beatles that we're talking about. I'm not saying that these songs are bad. I'm saying that in terms of if I was to put them in order of enjoyment, this is the order in which I place them. So without further ado, let's dive straight in. This is Please Please Me, the tracks ranked. And what a way to start an album. Paul's enthusiastic 1, 2, 3, 4 has got to be one of the best album openings ever. Fun little fact, that count-in that was released on Please Please Me actually wasn't a part of that take. It was lifted from a different take. The full count-in and take can be heard on the Free as a Bird single, which was released in the 90s. George Martin was so determined to capture the energy of the Beatles' live shows that he originally suggested recording the whole album live, screaming fans and all. Since that didn't happen, the iconic count-in became the next best thing. The song itself is an absolute classic. It fizzes with enthusiasm and it perfectly captures the raw rock and roll spark that ignited early Beatlemania. I adore it, but younger me barely knew it. It wasn't on the original Red and Blue album, which was kind of the backbone of my early Beatles education. Thankfully, the remixed Red album finally corrects that omission. Does it get everything right? Well, I'm glad you asked. Check out my own personal version of the Red and Blue album in this video, where I go through the changes made and make the case for an alternative track list. As for I Saw Her Standing There, for me, I'm going to go for the mono version. It just has more punch and attack than the stereo versions in both 2009 and 2023. And of course, this being the first track, we see it standing there all by itself in first place. Misery follows the explosive energy of I Saw Her Standing There with a bit of a rowback, a jaunty yet slightly plodding little tune about unrequited love. It was originally written for Helen Shapiro, who never actually ended up recording it. Instead, a slightly adapted version was picked up by actor and singer Kenny Lynch, who does a perfectly good take on it. I actually included Misery in my Worst Songs by the Beatles video, which I call the Brown Album. You can find that video on the channel too. But despite that, I don't mind it at all. It's perfectly serviceable. It's just not exactly top tier for me. One thing I do genuinely like is George Martin's little piano rundown in the middle eight. Still, I much prefer I Saw Her Standing There, so Misery keeps it company by sitting in second place. And once again, I'm going for the mono version. Early Beatles stereo mixes weren't exactly subtle, and the hard panning on the intro in this is particularly noticeable. Mono just feels a little bit more cohesive and punchy. This is the first of several covers on Please Please Me, and this song was originally performed by Arthur Alexander. Am I the only one who finds it kind of odd that the title of the song is Anna Go To Him, when in both versions of the song they actually sing Go With Him? It's a tiny thing, but it's always struck me as slightly odd. Does Go To Him have a better ring when you read it? I don't know. Anyway, it's a cracking little song, and I actually think you should go and check out the original because, in a way, I think it's the stronger version. John gives a great vocal performance here, don't get me wrong, but I just think the song benefits more from the more soulful treatment that Arthur Alexander gives it. John might have even benefited from keeping it in the original key. They've transposed it up a few notches, and I think it pushes John to the limit of his vocal range. I find the reverb much more noticeable on the stereo mix than the mono, which is probably because I'm getting John singing in one ear, but I'm getting the reverb in the other, and I find it really distracting. So once again, I'm going with the mono version for this one, and I'm sitting it at the bottom of my list for now.
My baby's got me locked up in chains.
So this one's another cover, and it was originally written by Jerry Goffin and Carole King, and originally recorded by The Cookies. I think you can absolutely hear why the Beatles would have heard this and wanted to have a swing at it. It contains the same layered 3-part harmonies that the boys themselves would eventually become famous for. And once again, I find myself recommending that you should check out the original. It's a great song, and honestly, I think it deserved a better go at from the Beatles. It kicks off with a pretty piercing harmonica, which is certainly going to wake you up after the fade out of Anna Go To Him. George takes the lead vocal on this one, and perhaps in an effort not to bury him during his moment in the spotlight, he's mixed quite prominently. The downside is that this takes away from the blend of the harmonies, which is a shame given how harmony driven the song is. For my ranking, I'm placing Chains just below Misery but above Anna Go To Him. And once again, I'm choosing the mono mix. Those hard pans are back and they're just too distracting for me.
I've been told when a boy kisses a girl, take a trip.
Another cover and a showcase for Ringo this time. Boys was originally released by the Shirelles as the B-side to their hit Will You Still Love Me Tomorrow. I really like the Shirelles version, but I also like the Beatles interpretation. They up the tempo, they give it a little bit more drive. Ringo sounds like he's having a great time, and to his credit, he never misses a beat. I'm pretty sure that this is an as-live performance, recorded and wrapped up within a single take. So we've got a solid rock and roll number with a tight, enthusiastic as-live feel. So why am I ranking it below everything else so far? Well, I just don't find it particularly interesting, I've got to say. Everything above it has had something that's piqued my interest in one way or another. Boys is perfectly serviceable. I just don't care all that much. So for now, it lands at the bottom of this ranking, and as you can probably guess, I'm going for the mono mix again. It simply has more energy and punch than the slightly muted stereo mix.
I love you, 'cause you tell me things I want to know.
A Lennon-McCartney original now, and I'd go so far as to say that Ask Me Why is a bit of a hidden gem on this album. Structurally, it's really interesting. It kind of lurches around in a kind of haphazard way, almost like lots of little song fragments pieced together. And yet for me, it works. It's boldly different, if a little awkward, and those harmonies are genuinely lush. Some of my favourite vocals on the whole album, in fact. In my ranking, Ask Me Why is definitely better than anything that we've heard on the album so far, except for I Saw Her Standing There, so it slots quite neatly into second place. Don't ask me why. As for mono versus stereo, this is the first one that's made me pause a little bit. Separating the instruments from the vocals in the stereo mix actually allows you to hear a little bit more detail in those vocal harmonies. Do you know what? I'm going to give it to the stereo mix. It's an unconventional song, so I'm breaking from convention too. The title track, Please Please Me, is going to give I Saw Her Standing There a run for its money for first place. I love this song. I always have. The build-up and release in the come on sections just gets me every time. McCartney's melodic bass line is an early sign of his consistent brilliance. And that piercing harmonica and lead guitar riff is a signature hook. It never gets old. Do I prefer it to I Saw Her Standing There? Well, no. As much as I love it, it doesn't quite match the same energy as the opening track, although it comes very close. And in terms of mono versus stereo, there's no question. Mono wins hands down. The ending of the stereo version just seems to fall apart. The reverb ramps up, the harmonica seems strangely out of sync. So the question is, does the 2023 remix outshine the mono mix? So I do like that the drums are allowed to breathe a little bit more and given a little bit more oomph in the 2023 remix, but that ending still has the harmonica out of sync. even if the reverb has been tidied up a little. I find this kind of surprising because Giles Martin's always said that the mono mixers have served as his template for the remixers, given that those are the ones that the Beatles signed off on. Whatever the reason, I'm sticking with the original mono mix, just about. Now we're talking. 2 early classic Beatle hits, one after the other. Love Me Do was the Beatles' first single and has a surprisingly tangled history. When they originally presented it to George Martin, he wasn't happy with Ringo's drumming, so they brought in session musician Andy White to drum on the track. As a result, 2 versions were released. The single version with Ringo on drums, and the album version with Andy White, with Ringo relegated to playing tambourine. That must have been so humiliating, poor old Ringo. Strictly speaking, that means that I can't include the 2023 remix version because it's the album version that we're talking about here. And honestly, I think I prefer the album version anyway. McCartney's vocal sounds much more confident and the drums are much more prominent. Perhaps Martin mixed Ringo down a little bit on the single version because he wasn't happy with the drumming. So it's mono versus stereo again, except there's a twist. Because on the 2009 stereo remaster, neither this nor P.S. I Love You are actually presented in stereo. According to the 2009 remaster liner notes, because the 1962 twin-track tapes of Love Me Do and P.S. I Love You had been discarded, the original stereo vinyl LP presented them in fake stereo. I'm not entirely sure what fake stereo means. If somebody could enlighten me in the comments, I'd really appreciate it. Although this was common practice at the time, it subsequently fell out of favour, and so these songs are presented on this CD in mono. So there you have it. When comparing mono to mono, there really is no choice other than mono. But where does it sit in the ranking? Well, I do love Love Me Do, but it is a bit simple and a bit plodding. The harmonies are lovely. The harmonica is characteristically confident and iconic. But it just doesn't hit me in the same way that I Saw Her Standing There or Please Please Me do. And I'd even go so far as to say that Ask Me Why is more interesting of a listen. So Love Me Do sits in 4th place. For now.
P.S. I love you.
Another early Lennon-McCartney original now, and I'll be diplomatic. P.S. I Love You is a sweet little tune, very much of its time, and I can see why it appealed to the Beatles' teenage girl fans. It's sentimental, it's romantic, and it fits neatly into that early 60s letter song tradition. But honestly, the song doesn't really give me that much to hold on to. The entire lyric is essentially a short little note repeated over and over. And by the end of the track, it starts to feel a bit lazy and dull. There's nothing wrong with simplicity, but this is one of those cases where the repetition doesn't do anything, it just repeats. To his credit, McCartney does try and spice things up with a few vocal ad-libs in the final verse, and all that kind of stuff, but it all falls a bit flat, to be honest. Paul's vocal's pleasant, the harmonies are nice enough, if not their best, and the arrangement is perfectly serviceable. It never really develops for me. So I'm placing P.S. I Love You just above Misery. It's pleasant enough, but the heavy repetition and lack of development keep it firmly in the lower tier. As with Love Me Do, the 2009 stereo version isn't actually stereo at all, so there is no other choice other than mono.
'Cause baby, it's you. Sha-la-la-la-la-la-la.
Another one first recorded by the Shirelles, and a rare songwriting collaboration between Bacharach and David and the Shirelles' producer Luther Dixon. I can absolutely recommend the original, except for that frankly awful sounding electric organ solo. It's piercing, and it doesn't really fit the more laid back, slightly floaty, soft focus vibe of the rest of the record. But it is a cracking song, and I think the Beatles version is absolutely fantastic. Lennon sings it beautifully, and Paul and George's backing vocals really adds to the drama of it.
Cheat.
The Beatles' arrangement is simpler, but in a good way. It lets the melody and performances shine without anything getting in the way, and it replaces that awful organ solo with a chuggy little Harrison lead guitar, which George Martin mimics and follows in a higher octave on a celesta, which is a kind of piano version of a glockenspiel. It creates a really nice, subtle depth. In the ranking, I'm placing this below Love Me Do, but higher than Misery. It's the best cover on the record so far for me. And unsurprisingly, I'm going for the mono mix again, for much the same reason as the others. Again, the vocal panning puts the vocal in my right ear and the reverb in my left, and I find it just so distracting. Mono just has more cohesion and more energy.
Listen, do you want to know a secret?
George's second song on the album is, for me, much better than his first. Do You Want to Know a Secret is another Lennon-McCartney original, and despite being very repetitive, I don't feel it outstays its welcome. It's simple, but it's tidy. It knows what it's doing and it gets on with it without dragging its feet. The real hook of the song is that descending chord pattern in the verse, with Lennon and McCartney's soft floating over the top of it. It's a lovely little motif, and I feel it gives the track a nice gentle charm that helps elevate it above some of the other songs on the record. George's vocal is earnest, and you can feel him settling into his role a little bit more on this song. He's not the best singer, but I think he does a good job here. I'm going to place Do You Want to Know a Secret below Love Me Do, but just above Baby It's You. And again, it's going to be the mono version that I choose as the better version.
A taste of honey, tasting much sweeter than...
Another cover now, and A Taste of Honey was originally written by Rick Marlowe and Bobby Scott as the instrumental theme for the film adaptation of a play by the same name. And if you'll pardon the pun, the song took quite a long and winding road before being picked up by McCartney for inclusion in Please Please Me. There were a couple of instrumental versions released in '62 and '63 with varying success. There was a version in 1963 released by Acker Build, and that became a top 20 UK hit, which must have piqued McCartney's interest, given that the Beatles had put down their own version of the song just a few months prior. The first vocal version, interestingly enough, was recorded by a certain Billy D. Williams in 1961 for his album Let's Misbehave. I assume he didn't have a bad feeling about it. McCartney's take is adapted from Lenny Welch's 1962 version, and he sticks quite faithfully to it. Aside from changing A Taste Much Sweeter Than Wine into Tasting Much Sweeter Than Wine. There's nothing else quite like this on Please Please Me, and I really like that it gives McCartney a chance to have a bit of a croon, and his vocal is fantastic. He really shows off his range and the strength of his voice, and it's a really lovely contrast to the more energetic material around it on the album. There is a tad too much reverb for me, especially in the I Will Return section, but that's a criticism I could level at the whole album, to be honest. And as much as I enjoy it, I do think it's something of a novelty. So I'm going to place it below Baby It's You, but ahead of P.S. I Love You. And once again, I'm choosing the mono version.
There's a place where I can go.
Here's the last Lennon McCartney original on the album, and for me, it's an absolute banger. There's a Place sits firmly in hidden gem territory, one of those early Beatles songs that just doesn't get talked about nearly enough, despite being packed with energy, invention, and a genuinely spirited vocal performance from both Lennon and McCartney. And that's even more impressive when you consider that Lennon was battling a nasty cold in the middle of this session. The harmonies are cracking throughout, and the song just has this wonderful sense of forward motion. It just whips along. The call and response vocals between John and Paul add a lovely texture. The whole thing just feels like a band firing on all cylinders, confident, cohesive, and pushing the boundaries of straightforward pop. This one's top tier for me. It sits above Love Me Do, but just below Ask Me Why. Just. And once again, no surprises, I'm choosing the mono version. It's punchier, much more focused, and far more exciting. And finally, we come to quite possibly the greatest cover the Beatles ever recorded. They adapted the Isley Brothers' 1962 version, although the song was actually previously recorded by the Top Notes the year before. But let's be honest, the Beatles absolutely made this their own. This is one of those rare cases where a cover is so definitive, it absolutely eclipses everything that came before it. It was the final song recorded for Please Please Me, and everyone knows this story. That just one more song needed to complete the album, tackled at the end of a very long double-digit hour recording session. They only had one shot at it. Lennon's voice, already shredded by a nasty cold, was on the verge of giving out entirely. What resulted is magic. A raw, electrifying performance powered by Lennon's rasping, torn-to-shreds vocal. An almost primal energy that builds and explodes through those signature harmonies in the chorus. It's one of those recordings where you can feel the room, the urgency, the adrenaline. It was done in a single take because Lennon's voice simply couldn't take anymore. He'd laid it all out in that recording. Can you imagine being in the room for it? But where does it sit in my ranking? Well, pretty much slap bang in the middle. I am somewhat biased towards Lennon-McCartney originals, but Twist and Shout is as important a record as any in their earlier period. It absolutely screams Beatlemania. Literally. And for this final entry, I'm going to give the 2023 remix its due. Giles Martin did a great job here, capturing the energy of the mono mix, while giving the drums and bass a welcome lift, emphasising the natural drive of the performance without losing any of its grit. Well, Apple Jammers, here it is, the final track list of Please Please Me ranked. What do you think? Have I cruelly relegated one of your favourites to the bottom? Or have I heaped praise on a song that to you is just a bit meh? I want to hear all about it in the comments. Tell me where you agree, tell me where you disagree, and feel free to share your own rankings too. I love seeing how differently these songs hit people. There's going to be plenty more episodes in my Ranking the Beatles series. Album art rankings, album rankings, hairstyle rankings, Ringo's greatest tambourine moments, every year ever recorded. You know, all the essentials. Okay, some of those weren't entirely serious. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, it really helps out. And all that's left to say is, ta-ra for now. And thanks for watching.